We live in a world that is utterly terrified of aging. We are bombarded with advertisements showing flawless porcelain skin, promising eternal youth. If we just buy the right product. My name is Elena, and like millions of other women, I fell into that trap. I am 35, but in the reflection of my bathroom mirror, every tiny wrinkle felt like a personal failure. Desperate to halt the march of time, I began browsing underground beauty forums, looking for something stronger than drugstore lotions. That is where I found Eterna, an unlabeled experimental serum sold by an anonymous vendor. The reviews were ecstatic, claiming it could reset your skin's biological clock within days. I paid a fortune for a tiny black glass jar. I thought I was buying beauty. I didn't know that I was purchasing a ticket to a physical and psychological hell, and that within a week, the reflection in my mirror would no longer be human. The human mind has a dangerous capacity for self-deception when it desperately wants to believe a lie. When the package arrived, there was no brand name, no list of ingredients, just a heavy black jar containing a thick, iridescent silver cream that seemed to absorb the light around it. It felt cool, almost alive, against my skin. The first night I applied it, the results were nothing short of miraculous. I woke up the next morning, and my skin was glowing, tight, and completely devoid of any imperfections. It was as if the cream had erased 10 years of stress overnight. My husband, Mark, noticed it immediately, complimenting my appearance over breakfast. I felt an intoxicating surge of triumph. I had beaten nature. I had found the holy grail of cosmetics, but the euphoria was short-lived. By the evening of the second day, a strange, deep tightness settled into my facial muscles. It wasn't the pleasant firmness of a facial massage. It felt as though the underlying tissue was actively contracting, pulling my skin taut against the bone. When I smiled, the expression felt stiff, mechanical, and slightly delayed. I went to the bathroom to wash my face, but no matter how much warm water and soap I used, the silver residue of the cream seemed to have vanished entirely beneath the surface, leaving my skin feeling unnaturally cold to the touch. As I stared into the glass, a faint, rhythmic throbbing began deep within my jawline. A slow, organic pulse that didn't match the beating of my heart. Panic, cold and sharp, began to take root in my chest. Something was changing beneath my skin, and it was already too late to wash it away. On the third morning, the transformation could no longer be hidden or denied. When the alarm went off, my face felt so heavy that I could barely lift my head from the pillow. I rushed to the bathroom, and the sight in the mirror made me drop to my knees in sheer terror. The left side of my face was completely distorted. The smooth, youthful skin from the day before had hardened into a thick, asymmetrical mass. It didn't look like an allergic reaction or a typical swelling. The texture of my skin had mutated into something resembling old, polished leather or weathered stone, covered in tiny, microscopic ridges and deep, unnatural fissures. My left eye was partially compressed by the hardened flesh, forcing it into a permanent, terrifying squint. Panic turned into a frantic, chaotic attempt to reverse the damage. I grabbed a stiff body brush, industrial soap, and even rubbing alcohol, desperately scrubbing at my own flesh until it bled. But the mutated tissue didn't feel pain in the normal sense. It felt numb, dead, and utterly unyielding, like a foreign mask grafted onto my skull. When Mark knocked on the bathroom door, asking if I was okay. I choked back a sob and lied, telling him I had a terrible migraine and needed to be left alone. I couldn't let him see me. I couldn't let anyone see this monstrosity. I called in sick to work, fabricated a family emergency, and closed all the curtains in the house. My home, once a sanctuary of comfort, was instantly transformed into a dark, claustrophobic fortress of shame and isolation. By the 5th day, the mutation had consumed my entire face, and my sanity was slipping away into the darkness. The hardened, leathery tissue had spread across my forehead, my nose, and my chin, erasing my human features and replacing them with a grotesque, asymmetrical landscape of distorted flesh. I looked like a monster from a nightmare, a corrupted caricature of a human being. The physical sensation was agonizing. The hardened mass felt incredibly heavy, pulling my head downward, while the internal throbbing had grown into a deafening, rhythmic roar that echoed in my ears 24 hours a day. It felt as though something was living inside my skull, feeding on my identity, slowly erasing the woman I used to be. My isolation became absolute and psychotic. I systematically went through the house and covered every single reflective surface with heavy black tape and dark blankets. I couldn't bear the thought of accidentally catching a glimpse of my own deformity. I ignored Mark's frantic pounding on the bedroom door, his voice cracking with emotion as he begged me to open up and let him help me. I screamed at him to go away, threatening to hurt myself if he tried to break the lock. I lived in total, pitch-black darkness, eating whatever stale food I could find in my room, surrounded by the rotting remains of my former life. The low, rhythmic pulsing in my face became my only companion, a constant, mocking reminder of the price I had paid for my vanity. I was a prisoner in my own body, trapped in a dark quarantine of my own creation. The climax of my isolation occurred on a freezing Thursday night, exactly 1 week after I had first opened that cursed black jar. It was 3 a.m., the hour when the darkness feels heaviest. I was lying on the floor, my body shivering from exhaustion and starvation, my deformed face throbbing with a violent, agonizing rhythm. The silence of the house was suddenly shattered by a tremendous, deafening crash at the front door. Boom! The sound of splintering wood and shattering glass echoed through the hallway, followed by the heavy, hurried thud of tactical boots moving toward my bedroom. Mark had finally called the emergency services, convinced that I was either dead or in mortal danger. I heard the lock on my bedroom door give way with a sharp metallic snap, and the door swung open, framing several heavy silhouettes against the dim light of the hallway. Blinding beams of flashlights cut through the darkness of my room, searching for me. I screamed, a raw, inhuman sound of pure panic, and tried to scramble into the closet to hide my monstrous face from their sight. I grabbed a broken piece of a wooden chair leg, swinging it wildly to defend my dark quarantine from the intrusion. Strong hands grabbed my wrists, pulling me out into the light, while a chaotic chorus of voices shouted for medical equipment and restraints as they dragged me out of the house into the freezing night air. I caught a glimpse of the neighbors standing on their lawns, watching the monster being removed from their perfect street. The true psychological horror of my story did not reveal itself until I woke up in a sterile, white hospital room, my arms secured to the bed rails, and my entire head wrapped in thick, heavy medical bandages. A doctor was standing over me, his face grim as he reviewed my charts. Mark was sitting in the corner, his eyes red from crying, unable to even look at my face. The puzzle was finally put together, and the truth shattered whatever remained of my sanity. There was no magical mutation. There was no supernatural transformation. The counterfeit cream I had bought online from that anonymous vendor contained lethal, industrial-grade concentrations of unregulated chemical acids and banned organic mercury. It didn't rewrite my DNA. It caused an immediate, catastrophic, third-degree chemical burn that literally liquefied the deep layers of my skin and facial tissue. But the true horror was what my own mind had done. The toxic ingredients had leaked into my bloodstream, triggering a severe, acute chemical psychosis. In my oxygen-starved, drug-induced delirium, my brain had fabricated the myth of a monster to explain the agonizing pain. While I was locked in that dark room, convinced I was transforming into a creature, I had taken my own fingernails and a pair of grooming scissors and systematically clawed and mutilated my own face to pieces, believing I was trying to clean the mutation away. I had done this to myself. Today, the bandages are coming off. The doctors say they have managed to save my life, but the structural damage is permanent. I am completely disfigured for the rest of my days. The next time you see an ad promising a shortcut to perfection, look closely at the reflection in the glass. The only true monster is the insecurity we feed until it devours us alive.